Welcome to the Elk Season Podcast, Season 4, Episode 10?
Yeah.
Is it 10?
Episode 9.
Episode 9?
Episode 9.
Today is the 10th of April, and we are 141 days from Elk Season. We are the Chambers Brothers. My name is Harold.
I'm David.
And tonight on the Elk Season Podcast.
We have a grizzly attack survivor. We have a grizzly bear death. We have robotics that we're going to be talking about. Outdoor potential robotics. Jurassic Bark. Stay tuned to figure out what that one could mean.
Ooh, I don't know.
We're going to talk a little bit about elk, too. Northwest Montana with an elk population concern. Local issues with coyotes. And even finding arrowheads.
Yeah.
So all that and maybe more, because that's what we do on the Elk Season Podcast.
Oh, I got more. I would like to start this episode of the Elk Season Podcast with an invocation. Bow your head for the man's prayer. You already knew.
I already heard this today.
I'm a man. You heard it?
I heard it on the radio today.
Because I talked about it on my radio show. The movie's coming out, right?
I didn't know there's a movie.
There's a movie. It's going to be on YouTube April 12th. It's called Duct Tape Forever.
Okay.
An evil land baron is going to take Possum Lodge, and they have to raise $10,000 with a duct tape, origami type of contest.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, Harold.
I know. It looks great.
Anyway.
It's so Canadian and so ridiculous.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Anyway, I didn't hear that part of it. I heard you do the man's prayer, though. And I was like, you just stop in the middle of traffic to do it. You just come to a stop,
of course,
recite the man's prayer, and then you keep driving. People might honk at you, but that's normal protocol.
The man's prayer is pretty short. Yeah. So I'm a big Red Green fan. I know you are too. And to have a cool movie like that on YouTube,
I had no idea. I thought that they were basically all done for long. I mean, because the series has ended a long time
ago.
So that's fun. I'm excited. Yeah. Something to look forward to.
Yeah. Anyways, that I just found that it was on my scroll.
We'll do a special episode movie review.
Yeah.
Reaction. You watch us react to the show because we can't legally show it. So
why not? Anyway,
don't know why not.
Yeah.
I think you're the one putting the brakes up in front of that. Anyway.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. That was unnecessary banter. Anyway.
Unnecessary throwing under the bus.
Hostility. All right. Okay. So the big news this week, though, other than red green, because I consider that in my own personal way, the red green thing is big news.
It is big. I love red green.
But there's a little thing that comes in behind it a little ways. And that has to do with a Jurassic Bark. That was your title for this.
I've been seeing a lot of dire wolf talk on my scroll. That is not my call. Somebody else made up Jurassic Bark. It works. It's great. It's just as important to recognize a good idea as it is to have one.
Good point.
And that's a good idea. That was a fun joke.
But dire wolves are the next big news this week.
Yes. And I'm instantly skeptical because crazy announcements have been made before.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing all kinds of contrary things come in. Although, yes, they've created something that's not a wolf. They have. I mean, it's not Canis lupus, right? It has some genes from the dire wolf. It's not a dire wolf. It has some genes from the dire wolf. Or, from what I understand, some genes scientists think would make a regular wolf look more like a dire wolf.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I understand it. To look like a dire wolf, not to actually be a dire wolf.
Right. And even some of the scientists and some of the clips, like one of the things I'll say is if you're not so opposed to check out any of you out there, Hank's channel.
Hank Green.
Hank
Love
Green,
Hank Green
is a great science communicator. I use clips of his for the classes I teach because he just does a good job, putting it in a nice, easy to digest package. He sits down and gives you almost a 30-minute digestion of this news, the science behind it, and the excitement that we can have and the concerns that we should consider. Yeah. It's just a well done thing. And
well-rounded science guy, Hank Green.
One of the clips in the video, though, and it's not a complete spoiler alert, it's just the scientists that are doing this editing. So they take the genome that they know of the dire wolf, what is the tissue they can use, and they look at the the next species that they can possibly have that's close relative. And he actually addresses close relative of the dire wolf. It's not as close as that phrase makes it sound.
Right.
But they go, okay, here's all the genes that look similar versus different, and we're going to try to swap out where we can. Hence, where we can means we can't do the whole genome. Right. And there are also some things that if we change it, it could bring about disease and issues for this creature that we don't want. So we have to leave it to the gray wolf gene. So it's not
a dire wolf.
A dire wolf.
You know, it has dire wolf trait. Yeah.
It's and just like
looking traits.
We live in a clickbait world. So the scientists, I can't argue with their approach. It's going to grab headlines. It's going to bring awareness and maybe help them generate some funding for the work they're doing. It's clickbaity, but even I get a sense from, especially from that synopsis of their release, that even they know that, it's not quite direwolf, but this is how it works. This is what the technology can also do. Yeah. They did little woolly mammoth mice the other week that they released already.
That's right. That's right. Woolly mice. Yeah.
I argue that if those things became real, that cats would no longer eat mice because they'd always choke on the hairball and the hairball would come back. Well, it's actually like an endless mouse toy because they eat it, they choke on it, it jumps out.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it'll run off and they can chase it again. Okay, so there's just too much hair on that thing.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know why. And this is going to be out of context and probably not funny at all. But like,
not yet. But keep going.
But if those mice, say those mice became reproductive phenoms like every other mouse on the planet,
right?
And they broke out of the lab and they invade our spaces. Thank goodness we no longer have shag carpet.
Right. We'd never see them.
Yeah.
We'd never know they're there. Yeah. So what this direwolf conversation does is it opens up the idea, the conversation. We've been talking about, and we have talked about on the Elk Season Podcast before, the bringing back of woolly mammoths, because that's where we talked about the woolly mouse.
Yeah.
And I also read another story today that a man was arrested, 71-year-old man was arrested and charged for having 7 live tigers in his home. Now, my joke was, why? It's cheaper than getting remarried.
Sure.
And a lot less painful and a lot less dangerous. Let's be honest right there. But let's say, because the direwolf is the beginning and woolly mouse, woolly mammoth, and of course, saber-tooth.
Yeah.
Right? There are more captive tigers in America than there are free-roaming tigers in the world.
It's crazy.
Okay? So to think about not this as an event, but this as a catalyst, this as an antecedent to so many other things that come, because the very first sheep that was cloned in Scotland.
In 1999, Dolly.
Right. And then the first hooved animal was in Idaho.
Oh, that's right.
It was a donkey, and it was out of ISU. Not ISU, but U of I. Yeah. Yep. And to say all of a sudden, cloning as an idea, you're like, well, that's a little ridiculous. But all of a sudden, oh my God, they're doing it in Idaho?
Yeah.
So
cloning is, when you think about the agriculture industry, cloning has been around for a long time.
Yes,
and so plants. There's been efforts to figure this out for mammals or species and sorts. So I'm not surprised that it's coming out. I'll be curious to see how it goes. What are the ethics around it? How do we manage this? How do we go forward in a way that is not destructive but helpful? If it is as helpful as they say, let's see it. Yeah. So, but you think of it this way: if it's going to be as helpful as they say, basically they have to go through these small experiments to get there.
Right.
And so, hence, I think the direwolf likeness was produced.
Yeah. So there was another podcast I saw clips from. It was Steve Rinella's Meat Eater podcast, who I really trust. It's a very good source, and he's having a genuine conversation with a scientist about the direwolf thing.
Okay.
And she said, because he's like, well, are there any tools or any human tools made from direwolf? She's like, no, the direwolf was pretty much extinct by the time humans came around 13,000 years ago. I go, hold up. White Sands, New Mexico, we're talking 20,000 years, 23,000 years. So, and this again is new, right? It's new evidence, but I think it might not be that long before humans, before we find maybe some direwolf tools. The problem with the DNA, what I heard was that there's like thousands of dire wolves in the La Brea tar pits.
Yeah.
But you can't. There's no DNA left, right? You need really good permafrost stuff.
Yeah.
You need stuff out of Russia, stuff out of Canada or Alaska.
Yeah, I don't know that the in the clip that I was alluding to, they did talk about this the tar pits or whatever, but I can't remember exactly where they said they got their specimens from to get the DNA. So
I heard multiple.
And that I do remember hearing something along that.
Yeah, we got some off of this tooth, and we're like, okay, well, let's see if there's another sample at another zoo or another a natural history museum, and let's get DNA from that tooth. And so they're taking it and mixing and matching. Now, in what's funny in Jurassic Park is they're like, hey, birds, dinosaurs, birds are more like dinosaurs than a lot of people think. But later in the movie, they're like, well, we changed it with some frog DNA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But here's what's interesting. I'm actually glad you brought that back up because I was like, there's actually a little bit more to the story around Jurassic Park, and that is around the author, Michael Crichton, who was himself a scientist. So when you think about the work he did for Jurassic Park, the book, and the detailed descriptions that he has in that, the science behind it was more informed, I think, than your typical author. It's not that when I say more informed, he takes it to a sci-fi realm, but he's able to bridge that gap from what we can do to what we could do because of his extensive knowledge. That's my take on Crichton.
Yeah, Michael Crichton did a lot of really good science and medicine work, biology work.
So, but think about what we're seeing with the dire wolf is stuff that he was writing about 64 million years ago.
That's right. Yeah. So to use, so really we have wolves with some dire wolf looking attributes, but what we really have is the beginning of something new.
Yeah.
And how are we going to regulate it? And let's say there is a farm with saber tooths, and you can drive through and see them and throw zebra legs out of your window and feed them. Let's say you can do that. And then let's say those saber tooths get out. What's going to happen to them? They're going to take over, right?
Yeah.
The ecosystem isn't set up for them.
No,
there's no real niche unless that niche is your children. No, unless the niche is human beings or something new, cattle.
Yeah,
right. Something that
if their diet consisted of stuff that we have around, but it was just in a different form,
they went extinct for a reason.
Yeah,
right. And this woman on this on the podcast talking about what I said about white sands, about everything dying out. Well, if we were here 20,000 years ago, 25,000 years ago, humans were here in North America, and now maybe the dire wolf went extinct because we took all of their prey.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? So I'm making that argument right now. Scientifically.
Yeah, I don't know if that's happening today or not.
But anyways, there's more to that story, and I love the way it looks.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to them doing this work. I think it's a little fantastical to say direwolf, but again, headline grabbing.
Yeah.
Technology
we live in a clickbait world.
It is what it is.
Everything is clickbait.
I can choose to be offended, or I can just be like, yeah, whatever. What do you got? Like, I'm going to make the choice on the latter. What do you got?
Right.
Don't come on. Let's go. All right. Let's talk about grizzlies.
Yes.
Since we're talking about predators.
Yes.
So do you want to go with old Two Toes or Grizzly Dude?
Let's talk about Two Toes first.
Okay.
Because this is, first of all, it's a Montana legend. Yeah. I grew up, I knew two different guys that swore they were the guy or they knew the guy who was hunting grizzly bears. And back when I was in high school, you could still hunt grizzly bears in Montana, not far from where we lived. Mm-hmm. And there was these guys that would tell the story how they had a very, very close interaction with a grizzly and took one of their claws. And later in life, they had a chance to kill that grizzly and swore they were going to do it. But once they see it, they can't. They just can't do it. And so when I watch Legends of the Fall...
That's the storyline.
Right, that's the storyline of Legends of the Fall. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've heard this my whole life. And of course, Legends of the Fall is based in Montana.
Yeah.
So, and they called it... What I remember the story being called Three Toes. Well, I don't know why. Grizzly bear has 5 toes. You take one, and now he's 3 toes.
You stab it just right.
But I guess. But there's sort of this: I'm part of you, you're part of me.
Yeah.
Now, there's a grizzly bear called Two Toes. It was. Do you have the story? Do you have it in front of you? Can you read it?
Oh, it was like the first one. I went the
Oh,
wrong
I'm
direction.
sorry.
It's okay. I was just on the wrong one. So the first documented fatal grizzly attack in Yellowstone National Park was in 1916 by a bear dubbed Old Two Toes. Federal workers responded by blowing the grizzly into oblivion using a garbage barrel booby-trapped with dynamite.
That's how they euthanized a bear. That's what they had to do. They booby-trapped a barrel with dynamite to kill a man killer. That was in 1916. That was more than 100 years ago.
It was a bit ago.
Right? We've come further in our grizzly management since then. I just want to say.
Highlight the stark difference of where we were versus where we're at.
Right. And if that's the first fatal grizzly attack as Yellowstone National Park and how they dealt with it. Yeah,
the last thing I want to do is have to start carrying around dynamite. I'll be honest. I just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's dynamite, C4, whatever. Look, it seems a little bit
I'm just uneasy
I'll risk
with
an
it.
attack with some pepper spray. Okay.
I'm just uneasy with it. Yeah.
But speaking of attacks, so we've told the story of my son Bram's name.
Yeah,
Was named after a guy on a show called I Shouldn't Be Alive. He was attacked by a grizzly bear elk hunting with his family.
Yeah.
Miraculously survived. Now, this is not the same story as him, but I was the guy from Montana, in the Grizzly Dude.
I have not read Grizzly Dude. You can look up Grizzly Dude online.
It's not Grizzly Man. That's Timothy Treadwell. He was in Alaska.
And the way this guy talks, he's definitely more dude.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, listen, man, I'm not an author. I was mauled by a grizzly bear. I'm just a dude. He's a grizzly dude.
Yeah.
But he was mauled. And one of the pictures, I don't think I talked about this, but one of the pictures, I didn't bring it. That associated with Grizzly Dude is a picture of a large group of people and an old mountain bike and a backpack. And I don't know if he was mauled off a mountain bike.
Interesting.
So I want to read that book. Mauled is the name of the book.
Yeah.
And Mauled is the name of the book. And the book is about his mauling and how he came back from that very, very traumatic experience.
I think we just figured out what Harold's next read is.
Well, I have a list. I'm in the middle of something right now. But, I have such a long list. Anyways. Where was I? Grizzly Dude. So now Grizzly Dude, why he's relevant again, not relevant again, but now he's going on a speaking tour.
Yeah.
And if there's any fish and game, any banquets for sportsmen or anything, you can have this guy, you can bring him in and have him talk to you about a grizzly attack. I would love to hear him speak.
Yeah, it would be great. And you said that it was his coping strategies. You get through the trauma, the PTSD of the situation to face it by talking about it, and that's actually a very good strategy.
Right.
And I'm glad that he's doing that, and hopefully
because who can you share that with? If you don't feel like you can share that with anybody, you feel really isolated.
Oh yeah,
and there's lots of people that want to hear those stories. As much as I don't want that story to happen to anybody,
right.
When the story happens. Yeah, please cleanse yourself. Tell me about it. And even my wife asked me this week. I was talking to her about it. She goes, "Are you worried about grizzlies when you go hunting?" I go, "There are not grizzly bears where I hunt," and I'm happy about it.
Yeah,
I am. As much as I am curious about hunting where there are grizzlies, and I really am.
Yeah,
right. It scares me. I'm not sure why.
Well, it's
other than
new.
this guy.
A black bear versus a grizzly. We know the difference. We've seen plenty of black bears. In fact, that brings me to a point that we didn't have written down anywhere. We need to go through a certification course on identifying, and I need to figure out what that is. For here in Idaho, we have to go hunting. We have to be able to identify grizzly versus black bear because there's been so many incidents here.
You can find everything you need at idfg.idaho.gov. They have an online course and links to it right there. You can take.
Yeah, I figured it was just a quick online thing. I just haven't. Yeah. I've been meaning to get in there and do that because I want to get it through.
I know, me too.
I got my license recently. Yeah, and I got my tag.
And spring bear season is now.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway, it was crazy cool to see two bears on the same day last year.
Yeah.
That was last year.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
It was cool.
It was insane. Yeah.
That was awesome.
I just didn't know what to do. It was amazing. We talked so much about bears.
Yeah.
And you're right. You were right that there was just fear was like the last thing on my mind at all. Being alone being in the woods and knowing that there's bears.
Yeah.
So
and because of we've had encounters, the black bear doesn't really. I mean, I don't want to just walk up to them and try to make friends. They could still kill me.
Absolutely.
I know that, but I'm not so timid. In fact, I think it's helpful to not have too much of a flinch reaction to bears.
right.
So if I do come across a grizzly, the last thing I want to do is be like, oh my gosh, I got to turn and run. That will kill me.
Right.
So I'm glad that I have sort of the response I have, which seems counterintuitive when you tell people those stories, wives particularly. They're like, "Wow, what?" So, but it's actually, I think, a healthier thing to do to assess and make calculated responses. It's okay to have a heart rate increase, but definitely know what you have for protection, whether it's a sidearm or some sort of bear spray.
Right.
All
right. And a simple procedure, just ready to act.
I'm going to skip into the elk population in Northwest Montana. I don't know all we need to cover on this. I just thought it was an interesting story related to an elk population in northwestern Montana. Apparently, the harvesting rates have declined dramatically in the last while. And so it's an incredibly difficult group of animals to monitor because of the ruggedness of the terrain and the overgrowth of the forest.
It was a very extensive article.
It was
really good.
And they had a lot of cool technologies that they're using so part of what they're doing is they're monitoring in the same general area. They're looking for the herds that they can monitor, and they're trying to see if they can learn some things from those herds, as well as doing some other things with the animals they can find within the area that's hard to manage, to see what they can learn. So they're in this beginning phase of figuring out what unique tools can we develop and design to better monitor and manage this population. And part of it had to do with a concern over maybe too few bulls with that region, but they don't have any answers quite yet. That was just one of the hypotheses they quoted. I don't know if you remember anything else I read in that article, but
so yeah. Well, there's some things that come to mind because Northwest Montana is really northern Idaho. In fact, it should be northern Idaho.
I know,
right?
Yep.
And what do we know and what have we talked about in northern Idaho? Huge amount of wolves.
Yep.
Huge amount of wolves. And we haven't been talking about Northwest Montana like that. And then the other thing I'd like to say is just how the West is configured.
Yeah.
In its mountain ranges, because there's mountains and there's valleys.
Yes.
And some of the valleys are small and they call those holes.
Okay.
And then you have some of the mountains just have rivers that go through them. And there's no broad valleys, there's no holes. And the central Idaho mountains are like that. Very rugged, right? There's no valleys you can drive up, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And a lot of that in northern Idaho and northwestern Montana is very, very tight mountains. In fact, you go northwest Montana, that's Missoula. You go just out of Missoula, you go northwest of Missoula, that's where the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation was founded.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So this is the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation base. Is right here.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of great studies, but it's still hard because those mountains are so rugged.
Yeah, terrain does not, we know this as elk hunters.
Yeah.
With bows. The terrain is rarely your friend.
Yeah.
You have to get out and learn the terrain and learn how to be symbiotic with it by finding the elevation, the trails, the systems. Because if you don't do that, you're working against yourself by clambering up and down too many hills. If you don't figure out the way that the animals work the hillside, you're working yourself too much. That's just my theory. But I think it's something that I've experienced through my own lived time up there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's... Oh, I lost my thought there, but it's different in northern Idaho.
Yeah,
it's different. It's thicker. And in fact, even when we grew up hunting in Montana, it was thicker, and it's even more thicker up towards between Spokane and Missoula. I mean, it's tight.
I've hiked into the Bob Marshall, man. I've seen it.
Yeah. So that's some really dense forests. It's not like we have here. Up here, we can hike those trails and we can glass. We can find those trails on Google Earth and just walk to them.
Yeah.
right? It's not the same in northern Idaho and northwest Montana. There are too many trees. It's just harder to see.
One of my favorite memories of hiking the Bob Marshall
Yeah?
was when we had to cross a fairly rapid creek.
Yeah?
It was you couldn't cross it by wading.
Yeah.
But there was a felled tree
Yeah.
large enough that you could go across on. So it's like in the movies. It
Yeah,
was really
it is.
cool. It was a cool memory.
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm out hunting and I have those opportunities, I make sure and take a video of it to show the wife later. It's always fun to keep her awake.
Still
at
never
night.
saw no bears though. I saw a very, very pale deer. That was the only animal we saw other than squirrels, chipmunks,
Wow.
and all that wilderness. But we were on some very, what would you say, developed trails.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that had something to do with it. But
And dense terrain.
plus it was also the spring, and the springtime that was very wet. It rained for hours, and it would stop raining for 10, 15 minutes before it would rain for hours again.
man.
It was a very wet trip. So animals are hunkered down during those times anyway.
What year was that?
1995.
Wow. Okay.
And it was thundery, lightning-ridden,
Yeah.
loud rain, and we were in canyons, and it was
Those big mountains can push out some thunderstorms. A thunderstorm in the mountain is so different than a thunderstorm in town.
I still want to go back. I thought I was going to be able to do this a few years ago,
Yeah.
but I've already missed the 25th anniversary, I think. Or no, I'm on the 30th anniversary, 30 years ago.
Listen, I know nostalgia is a big thing, and I would love to go back to all the places I've ever been and take everyone with me. But you have to go to Fishpole Lake with me this summer.
Oh, we already talked about that.
I know we did. I'm just reminding you.
Yeah. And
It's so great.
I've got a pull behind tent.
Yeah, you do. Is it 2-axle?
One.
I've got a single axle tent. That's pretty good.
Single axle tent. Yeah, thank you. Let's talk about, speaking of hunting.
Yeah.
Going
Actual
up and down
hunting.
terrain.
Yeah.
Accessories to hunting. We've talked about this before, but things are coming to the surface now.
Yeah.
Products that could be viable. One appears to be at market. The other one is hypothetical. I'm interested in both, but I'm also curious about how that could change the dynamics of hunting.
Let's talk about the hypothetical first, because that's always more fun.
I've passed people on horseback
Yes.
hauling out elk. But what if I didn't have to feed that horse? What if I just had to put out a solar panel to charge that horse?
Yeah. Actually, the Kawasaki's hydrogen powered.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. So what if I just had to bring along some water
Won't
and
be
a
long
battery
before
cell?
their batteries. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the
And some
hydrogen
low
powered
voltage batteries and some water.
right. Because you use the anode cathode to get
Right.
Yeah, anyway, all right. Sorry,
I get it.
I don't know why I felt like I didn't
It's
explain
nerdy funny, but it's funny.
that. Anyway, so you feed your horse with a 9-volt. Anyway,
Yeah.
Is that something that we should trails be allowed if somebody has a horse versus
You know
a
what?
mechanical horse?
If there's a motorcycle, what you have to worry about here is marked trails.
Yeah.
With a quadruped motorcycle that doesn't spin or make an impact, you could probably go off trail and not be as noticed, but you could still be doing damage,
Yeah.
right? And should it have the same rights as a horse?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like it kind of should,
Well,
as long as it doesn't leak oil or something weird. But even the horses have restrictions, right?
Yeah.
You can't bring hay into some of the areas. You have to bring pellets.
yeah.
Right? There's natural grass pathogens you don't want to pass on, and all kinds of issues.
So it just makes me curious where this will end up. Should this become more of a thing? We've talked. I don't know if I can't remember if we talked on the podcast, but like I know we've kind of like, what if there was a drone big enough to just drop us off at the top of the hill?
And there is.
And right. And so it's kind of along those conversations that we've had before, and it's like where will it go? I don't know. It's a really cool, intriguing video. I think some of it was live shot with what they currently have versus hypothetical animations,
CGI kind of.
yeah, but I'm curious.
Yeah, me too.
Until then, we're gonna have to put up with robotic legs, which is now apparently at market.
So we've talked about robotic legs before, and it's sort of a backpack system that you wear that carries the batteries, and the backpack clamps to your waist, and then there's powered hinges at your waist and your knees. Actually, this one is just above your knees, and it's just basically thigh power.
Yeah.
Just basically glute and thigh power. And I told you, in 20 years, if I need a prescription for this, I'll probably get it and still go hunting. But when this guy turned on the legs, he was giddy. It was very
genuine.
convincing. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh wow, look at me. It's easier to walk. I feel better. He was like, oh my gosh, it's a revelation.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I can jump higher. I can run faster. I'm not tired. You could see it. You could see it. And you see him connecting the dots. And you're like, yeah. And if it's that small, I could do day hikes when I'm 80.
Right.
That's 30 years from now. But I could do day hikes when I'm 80 with those things. And I would.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think, I would need a prescription. I wouldn't want to do it just because I'm lazy. All right.
I need
because
the reason.
I am. Let's get that out of the way. But I wouldn't want to do it. I like my mountain experiences to be
as authentic,
as pure as possible.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Even if I have a single axle tent?
Even if you have a single axle tent. Yeah.
You said that you actually came across this story too. You talked about it on your radio show, but this coyote incident locally.
Yeah, down at Auger Falls. So Auger Falls is it's not even a falls.
It's just a place. It's a rock outcropping that water goes over,
past.
channels
The
on.
mighty Snake River flows
but
past.
It's just below the mighty Shoshone Falls, the Niagara of the West.
And it's also just below the city of Twin.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of bike trails, and a lot of people use it, except in the wintertime when people don't use it because it's cold in Idaho.
Yeah.
And now it's spring and things are warming up, and a coyote has decided to den up in down by Auger Falls.
Yeah.
And some people go out with their dogs and they're like, hey, it's
a dog's
no
like,
leashes.
What's that smell coming out of this hole?
Right. And so a dog was attacked
by
the coyotes. And so they just want to get, hey, watch out for
awareness.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
you weren't there when they denned up. Right? There weren't people constantly around when they denned up. And now
all of a sudden,
there's puppies. There's puppies there you have to protect, and people are showing up.
I'm gonna defend my kids for sure.
Yeah.
Just a couple things left. But this last one, I've had some thoughts since you introduced it to me, and I want to remind you, and I can't remember if we've talked about this, but back when we lived in Montana, you came home one day and you're like, I think you had the tracker. Yeah. You said, let's get in the tracker. We're going to go out, I think, to somewhere near Montana City.
Okay.
And go to this field, and we're going to look for arrowheads.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just find them right on the ground and pick them up.
Yep.
And times change, perspectives change. I didn't find any fault. Still don't find any fault with that. And maybe it was legal. I don't know what the rules were.
I think it was. There was lots of people that did it.
Yeah, and that's what got us excited to go out there. And so we went and we were looking for obsidian, and I remember finding lots of little pieces and stuff like that. And I remember finding
close to arrowheads, nothing fully intact.
Yeah, I remember finding just the tiniest, what looked like the tip of an arrowhead.
It's still exciting.
Yeah. So, but growing up, and getting to know and understand the appreciation of things, particularly like Desert Drifter, who's like, leaves things where you find it. And I'm like, definitely wasn't the mentality I grew up with, but it's the one I grew into. And so I'm okay with that. As much as I feel like most people, I want to be able to take it home. I want to do that, but it's not mine. And it is, culturally, it's advantageous, particularly if it's never been found, especially if it's a significant find, to let people come in, study, and understand the peoples that were here before us.
And a little bit about why this is a law. First of all, let's go back to the Facebook page.
Yeah. So the reason why this came up. Yeah. So
it's on my scroll. It's like, hey, you live in Idaho. This is geology.com or whatever. It's not geology.com. This is a geology website, fun with geology, whatever. Hey, here's where to find arrowheads in Idaho. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to click on that and go look for arrowheads in Idaho.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't they? Why can't they?
Well,
you know about that.
So there's laws here in Idaho that tell you that you need to leave it where you find it, and then to report it.
Yeah.
Take a picture and then report it. And take a picture that you can keep forever, but then
Yes.
report that so that people can get out and study it, anthropologists and things like that. I work with an anthropologist, and we talked about, the need for better research. There's places locally that they actually do some things. I was actually invited to do some digs. I think it was either this summer or the following summer. I don't know if I have time or if I'll have the time to go out.
Hagerman?
No, just locally. There's different
okay.
places, different sites that they're doing active archaeology.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm definitely interested if I can make the time work. I haven't talked to her about that in a while. I'll have to reach out and be like, hey, where are we at with this? Because it'd be cool to just be able to go out and do that.
Really cool. Yeah.
Just assisting them in their work, and I could learn some things along the way. But ultimately, the laws have been in place since the early 1980s here in Idaho for this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of artifacts all over the world. In fact, all over the West, rather.
Yeah,
Desert Drifter opened my eyes. Like, there are places he goes where he can't not step on pottery and broken arrowheads and there, everything, all the tools they used, and it's amazing, and stuff that's crumbling out of the hillside because it filled in with dirt, but now it's eroding away, exposing itself. It's just so incredible. So I have a lot of appreciation for that. Plus, growing up around Native American culture, having just a lot of care for what has gone wrong for them, that I feel like it's important that we respect moving forward. And I actually know of a case. I actually looked this up because I heard about it and I never saw them. So in Dietrich, Idaho, there was a family there, and I don't want to name the family, and it's just what it is. It's nothing, good or bad on them for doing it. It's just what it is. But there was a member of the family in the early 80s that came across a cave that found all kinds of artifacts. Of course, it was not illegal at the time, and they scooped all these things up, took them home, and they've kept them. And they talk about it, but I think they've had them on display at various times, but they don't. It's not like a big conversation, but everybody knows. Oh, this is his family that has these things.
Yeah.
But it was the year after that find that I found a news article, and I had started school at CSI.
Yeah.
So I went, well, what can I find in an archive? And I found an old article clipping talking about the need for this law that's gone into effect, and they cited that incident.
Oh, wow.
Because it had become local knowledge.
Yeah.
Not that, but I don't think there was any shaming there. It was just like, these are the things that we want to watch out for. And I honestly, I have no idea if they talked with anybody or worked with anybody on this throughout the years.
To be fair, now that I think about it, the picture I showed you says where to find arrowheads in Idaho, not where to collect arrowheads in Idaho.
Now
but that's a slippery slope for them. Because if you don't know any better, but it is against the law to pick those up off the ground.
Yeah. Sorry if I get long-winded here.
Yeah,
but
I mean
it's just it's kind of fascinating too. I would love to see all those kinds of old artifacts. I decided that instead of finding arrowheads, I'm more interested in learning how to flint knap. I think it would be maybe cooler to just learn how to make my own.
Yeah, make your own. Cool. I did find an arrowhead made out of a beer bottle.
Oh.
And I found it at the junkyard.
Oh, yeah. I think you showed me that actually.
Yeah, it was flinting out. It was clearly flinting out, but it's like obviously a beer bottle. And we've seen giant chunks of obsidian in the South Hills when we hunted in the South Hills. So, and people go out in the South Hills all the time, and they take pictures and they go, "Oh, look at this arrowhead we saw," and they go, "Oh, I took a picture, but I also took it home." Right? So they don't. And there's even another guy who I know who's like, "Hey, you should come in and see what I found." And he's just got a huge collection, and he goes out all the time.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to hide it.
Yeah.
Too hard.
In the late 90s, there was a museum south of Hollister.
Yes.
There's a gas station out there, and he got in trouble for apparently going out and digging up artifacts.
American Heritage Museum.
Yeah.
But it was full of dead African animals. It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, I never got that.
I never got through the museum, so I had no idea what was in there. But hey, last thing is just some photography. They're really cool. You have to be in the right place at the right time with the right click. You get an awesome picture. We got that with that long-tailed weasel that we didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. So I took many pictures, but I got that one.
Yeah.
Where it's just up on the rock. It's crystal clear. It's so perfectly framed. Like I just love that picture. So this one is just a couple of bucks, clearly rutting. Muley
bucks going at it. They're not sparring.
Yeah.
They're fighting.
There's antler not attached to some of their...
In the air. Look at it just floating there. What a picture.
It's
what
great.
a picture.
It's fabulous. It's good. It's a good sight.
And what intensity those animals must have.
Yeah.
Because those antlers are not cheaply made.
No, there's a lot of time and energy and density in those.
Oh,
That's why when
gosh.
I saw those bull moose that were racking each other, it was intimidating. I'm like, I'm about 300, maybe 200 yards away from them.
Yeah.
But clearly the big moose was like, don't make messing with my ladies. Like he was, and anyway, it was crazy.
Yeah. And they can toss. I know maybe a moose weighs 1,500 pounds, but another 1,500 pound moose can throw that moose.
Yeah.
I mean, those buffalo and Yellowstone.
Oh,
those two bison, and they're 2,000 pounds easy. And he just lifts them off the ground with his neck.
Yep.
Like, buddy, just back off. It's incredible. The wilderness, wild animals are wild.
Nature is great and fascinating.
All right. Until next time.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
In the morning light, before dawn, bow grip tight, heart beating strong. Through the forest, ancient giants roam. In the land where the wild calls me home. Through the whispering pines and the autumn breeze, driven by the chase, crisp air I breathe. With every step I take, earth beneath my feet. In nature's beauty where the hunter and elk meet. The mountains rise, kissed by the sun. In September, where I belong. Bugles echo loudly through the veil. A symphony of an ancient tale. Through the whispering pines and the autumn breeze, driven by the chase, crisp air I breathe. With every step I take, earth beneath my feet. In nature's beauty where the hunter and elk meet. Silent as the morning mist, I travel on with careful grace. Every shadow, every sound surrounds me in this wild embrace. The challenge and the thrill, the patience and the skill. In the dance of life and nature, my heart's forever filled. As the sun sets, shadows long and deep, I find my place with the memories I keep. The chase and the beauty of a day gone by. Deep in the mountains, my spirit cries. Through the whispering pines and the autumn breeze, driven by the chase, crisp air I breathe. With every step I take, earth beneath my feet. In nature's beauty, out where the hunter and elk meet. Here's to the wild places where the elk and I both roam. The chase that brings us closer to the place that I call home. In the stillness of the forest, in the grandeur of the land, I am one with nature's wonder, with my bow here